Alheim said he would keep that in mind, and when he left, the professor said what an insolent fool carelessly talked about that subject. He gets angry when she replies that he is stating the truth and then angrily asks what she thinks. And before she starts lecturing him about the truth, she needs to consider his relationship. He is talking about the relationship between the Empire's family, Nifaleka, and the highly esteemed Emperor Rogopalis's family. While asking if she understands what he is saying, a jest Kingscrown quickly says something wrong, mistakenly adjusts Rogopalis. She sees a family status as shackles that bind her no matter how hard she tries to eliminate them. Still, her status, rank, and relationship with others are all determined by her family status. So, for example, even her marriage is determined. Hearing this all, she gets mad with anger. Seeing this, Professor Pugman asks her if she doesn't think her mana is a bit excessive, and, in any case, because her family and his family share a close bond, she shouldn't carelessly discuss these personal matters with others. Nothing good comes from talking about these things, even if it is the truth. Will she take responsibility if she ruins the mood for today's party? Then she blinked her eyes and said it was for a meaningless party. Hearing this, the professor got angry at her. She asked as he stated that this party was about celebrating the recognition the Blue Moon Party received from the Tower of Magic. Still, in reality, this was a celebration of the fact that Desir's party missed the recommendation date and could not receive support from the Tower of Magic. When he replies to her saying he didn't know that happened to him, and is she saying he needs to pay attention to a useless party like his at this, she angrily looks at him by saying he is the one who changed the date for the recommendation process. He was the one who never informed the desired party about it. Because he was afraid of this, he angrily shouts while pointing at her, saying this is all her fault in the first place, and this wouldn't have happened if he had properly beaten Desire last time. Does she not realize that all of this happened because of her, and now she is saying he is afraid? And she has no right to tell him that because she is just a failure at the party. At the same time, she thought that a person like him was leading this party, and for the thing that she had done for him. She blinked her eyes and remembered his words when he said a family status is very much like a shackle that binds her no matter how hard she tries to get rid of it. While he was shouting, if she was going to continue to rebuke him, she could leave the Blue Moon Party. But she was thinking that he would call this a party while she remembered about Desire Romantica and Pram and thought it was a party. After this, he tells her she can't leave this party even if she wants to, and because of their family's relationship, she can never leave it. After this, she throws away the badge of the Blue Moon Party by saying, just like he wished, she would now leave the party while he was shouting at her. After this, she untied her hair while leaving that place and said her ranks and status cared none for it. Professor Pugman was angry. Meanwhile, the Red Moon Party's members came there saying they were looking for him. At this, he turned back to see and asked if they were from the Tower of Magic, while laughing. One of them said they had some pressing matter they must attend to, so they wanted to give him their greetings before they left. When the professor replies that it's unfortunate, he says they thoroughly enjoyed his party and will return to it if he chooses to hold another one. Professor laughed by saying it would be his honor. Then the Red Moon Party member asked as the Tower of Magic had appointed a new technical advisor, and he wanted to ask if he knew anything about this matter. At this, the professor asks, wouldn't the Tower of Magic know more about their inner issues than he? At this, he said the reason why they were asking him was not only an extraordinary incident because the Tower of Magic Master personally appointed this person, but the person he appointed was someone from the Harem Academy as well. Listening to this, the professor gets surprised and asks if it's a person from their academy who was this. Then the member of the Red Moon Party, while looking at another member of his party, asks as he heard this person isn't an alumnus but a current student at his academy. He asks her to search for that student's name on her notepad, and then she tells him the student's name, Desir Arman. Professor was shocked to hear this name, and then he said he was a first-year student at the Haven Academy. On the other side, Desire Romantica and Pram, while taking tea, were sitting in the room where some dolls were, and she was complimenting the beauty of these dolls near them as they bought them from the theme park. They laughed while remembering the outing time, and then Desire asked them as they rested. Now, they had to talk about their main topic, and he asked them if they realized what they lacked after facing the outsider. At this, Pram surprisingly asks what they lack while Romantica, holding the end of her hair, says she is getting some split lot. They both were non-serious about what Desire was telling them. After this, Desire, while pointing Pram, says he lacked experience as his ability to locate the position of his enemies was subpar. If Romantica were not there when he was fighting with that scary mask guy, then he would have been in serious trouble. While understanding what Desire is telling him at this, Pram adds that the scary mask guy told him the same thing and that he wasn't able to judge his situation very well, so he was. Desire replies that it's okay and that he can always learn to fix it if he understands. She gets surprised when he points to Romantica, but he relaxes her, saying she doesn't have to look so worried because she did everything she could do against an outsider. She gets excited to hear this and replies he has no idea how much effort she put into sniping them. After this, he tells her it wasn't a compliment. He was saying she did all she could do at her current level, and now she has the single ranker title she needs to become stronger. At this, Pram teased her while she sadly said she knew, but that's easier said than done. They are both surprised when Desire says he will ask them questions as he has pointed out their weaknesses. Romantica angrily stands up by telling Pram that he just laughed and smirks at this. Desire tells them that when they have a liability, it is essential to supplement it. While giving Pram her hand, she said they had to leave because she couldn't hear him and wouldn't hear him anymore. Desire orders them to supplement their weakness while changing himself and saying evilly. They both try to run from there. Romantica falls even though the cup of tea falls on the table while laughing. He asks them if they don't think they need some training. They both get afraid to see Desire while sitting on the floor. Romantica said it was too late now they had heard what he wanted to say. Prams adds by saying he guesses that's right. They should do that training. Desire tells them they will start doing their hellish training, and then they scaringly reply they will do whatever he wants. The next day, Desire began their training. Romantica was sweaty while doing push-ups while Pram and Desire watched her from behind. After this, Pram and Romantica could not pay full attention while taking class because they were tired. Desire doesn't give them a break from training. He starts their running test after the course, and then in the library, Romantica slams down the book on the table in front of Desire, saying he can even get rid of the evening training session, saying these training are things that humans shouldn't be doing. While pointing to Pram, she angrily says, "Look at him, Desire." The Pram has a meltdown, he is dying, he is going to die. Still, Desire wasn't paying attention to her. Instead, he smiled while heading down to the table. Pram replied he was not dead, he was resting, as she shouted, "In any case, please get rid of the evening training session." Desire replies he can't do that. As she was getting angry, Desire asked her very politely about the characteristics of wind magic, and she answered it's speedy and can do ranged attacks. Desire adds by saying that's right. That way, mages with the wind affinity are the best people suited for the sniper position. However, there were certain limits to a 2-tiered magician back then, as her attack against a 4-tiered magician left no marks. And then she replies that's true, but it's not like she can become a 3-tiered magician already. If he's not a genius, then it will take a long time for him to stop her and say she needs to become a 3-tiered magician. She is shocked to hear this. Also, he knows it will be challenging, but he will tell her the methods to achieve this, so trust and follow him. The Pram was resting aside. Desire put his hand off his head and said he could stay there now. After this, they both come to the training hall, where Desire tells her that her goal is to achieve the 3-tiered magician status and to learn how to fortify the force of her magic attacks for her to be able to pierce through a tier 4 magician defense magic. She fearfully said she is telling him it's not easy just obtaining the 3-tiered magician status and needs to understand numerous magic spells and learn their nuance and delicence. Desire adds by saying that's the traditional way, and the method he is about to teach her is different. While giving her a cane, he thinks she will enjoy it. After this, while remembering the previous training from Desire, she said he thinks she is going to enjoy his training instead of having deja vu. After this, he said he would try the fastest way to attain the 3-tiered magician status in the shortest amount of time. However, she replies that he knows he's still a 1-tiered magician. He will teach her how to boost her status even if that doesn't make sense, and he will tell her to move that thing around again. Whatever, hand it over. While holding the cane, he laughs by saying this time, she will take this cane and do this, and then he turns the cane into a ball before her and asks if it seems simple enough. Then he spins the ball on his finger and says there is an upgraded version of that ball training. The difference is instead of moving the object, and she will carefully manipulate her force and distribute it in multiple directions to compress it and learn how to polish it. After this, when he hits the ball with his finger, she gets so surprised that sweat flows down her face. At the same time, she thinks, what is this dummy talking about right now? On the other side, Pram, while resting, thinks at that same time at the office, he is tired there. She doesn't believe how Desire has done this even though he's not a wind mage, and he's not a high-tiered magician. but he was able to create that perfectly shaped sphere by utilizing the wind pressure, and it doesn't make any sense. Desire throws another teen pack toward Romantic, and she catches it. Then he asks her to start by saying there are a lot of cans, so don't hold back. She thinks he is psycho, but at the same time, he is also a trustworthy guy, so she needs to use the wind pressure and compress this can. And when she compresses the can, the wind pressure intensifies around her. She excitedly shouts and comes to Desire to show him when she has done the compressing, but he asks her to wait if she loses focus. Then, instead of turning the cane into a circle, it gets the shape of a sphere. Seeing this, Desire laughs and tells her to while holding the can as he is just going to ask this to make sure, but she doesn't know the difference between a circle and a sphere. At this, she angrily replies she knows the difference. The next day at noon, Desire and Pram were there to do some combat training exercises in the outdoor arena. When Desire told Pram about the training, he was surprised, but Desire made him understand and told him that the only method to fail was his lack of combat experience, which was for him to do some sparring matches. Pram asks him happily, running up the stairs. If they're doing sparring matches, will he be sparring against people similar to his tier? Does that mean he will be able to fight Percival? When Desire replies no, he's not enough for him, he stops there, thinking that someone will be greater than Desire, and adding that he needs to fight against someone much greater than him. After this, Mr. Kairia comes there. Desire gives a little introduction of him to Pram that he is a tier 3 magician and a knight tier swordsman, and he is the captain of the guard for the Tower of Magic's Eluli branch. And when Kairia tells Desire not to tell everything about him to Pram as if the Tower of Magic's technical advisor raises him that much, he will make Audacity blush. Seeing him there, Pram hides behind Desire while holding him tightly and replies that everything he said is true, though. While seeing him, Pram said it seems he is a scary person. After this, Kairia told Desire that he was very thankful for the help and support he provoked when the Eluli branch was attacked. He accepted this sparring match out of gratitude, but his opponent is a frail-looking girl, and he is now losing interest. Pram angrily replies that he judges his opponent based on their outer appearance and how dare he look down on him. At this, Kairia surprisingly asks if he is a guy, but his arms and legs look like twigs, so he doesn't look like a guy, and he is sorry for misguiding him. Pram was getting angry after hearing these words from Kairia, and then he asked Desire if they could start their sparring match right now. Kairia smiles and raises his hand, but Desire replies to Pram that he is glad that he's motivated now. But before they begin the match, can they put this on? Then Desire gives both of them the arm badge attached to their arms, and then he tells them that the badge has been enchanted with sensory magic, and when the wooden sword contacts their opponent's body, that arm badge will sound an alarm. The first person to sound the alarm of their opponent will be the winner, and these are the conditions for the training for this day. However, the three of them stood before each other. Kairia laughed and teased Pram by saying it felt a bit unfair for that little boy. And when Pram angrily asked how he would know this, Desire asked if it was because this guy is a veteran, as he's pretty good at provoking his opponents. However, the competition started between the two. While guiding them, Desire told Kairia that he got the little boy at this Pram to shout to stop making fun of him. After this, when they both get ready, Desire begins the match. Pram jumps and attacks him with his wooden sword, and Kairia tries to hit him with his sword. Pram jumps from one side to another, while Kairia doesn't understand his movement as Pram quickly moves from one side to another. While Kairia sees this thing, he admits that he is not bad and thinks as his sword is fast and accurate, it is safe to say he's almost at the swift sword tier. He guessed it wasn't a false rumor when they said he was pivotal in apprehending the intruders back then. After this, he tells Pram, but he knows he isn't a little too agitated, and then watches because he's too agitated as he has too many openings. As the fight starts between the two, Kairia adds that his physical ability is frightening. But what is he doing? He is still way too inexperienced. Hearing this, Pram asks what he is saying at this. He replies when he's against a magic swordsman, it is not wise to create distance like that. As expected, his reaction speed is quite fast. But that's all there is to it, and then he attacks Pram with an ice blast. Pram is lost in smoke and says he can't see anything, while Kairia replies with a smile when his field of vision becomes blocked. Does he think he should start planning his next course of action? And if he stands around dumbfounded like that, while attacking Pram from behind, he tells them this will happen as he still has a long way to go, little boy. However, the next day at the exclusive Alpha Class restaurant is also the time until the first Shadow World begins D9. When Desire, Pram, and Romantica are sitting there, as she says she is exhausted beyond belief by time training after this, she angrily asks Desire if he is planning to kill them. Desire replies with a smile, but at least he gives them plenty of time to rest at this. She says it is too short, and she wants to have time to go shopping and to have time to go to the cake shop, and they need longer break time. Hearing this, Desire blinked his eyes and thought. He understands her point and knows that the intensity of their training is relatively high, but the problem is there isn't much time until the first Shadow World begins. His plans for what he wants to achieve within this year's Shadow World are impossible for them to accomplish with their current skills, but he can't tell them. After this, he asks with a smile that if they can successfully fortify their weakness, he will reward that with plenty of rest, so until then, they've to bear with him. Then she asks that's a promise while Pram sat aside, eating much and was drowsy. When Desire replies yes, she will take his word for it. Meanwhile, a guest comes there while holding her food tray. Many girls from the Alpha class get excited to see him and want her to sit with them, but he doesn't respond to anyone and silently gets past them. Pram says she's popular as they both were surprised to see this, while Desire doesn't seem interested in their conversation and shows them the picture Jode has sent him. After this, a guest put her food plate on the table beside them, and they were surprised to see that she sat near them. When Desire surprisingly says her name at this, she adds, saying it's rather peculiar that nobody wants to sit near his party at this. He replies that they're commoners. Then Romantica angrily asks a guest why she is there and what business she has with them, and in response, a guest asks her back if there a reason why she can't sit there. As Romantica was jealous, she angrily replied that she couldn't believe she was sitting right next to Desire, but she meant she did not see how they'd become the center of attention. Does she think they can eat comfortably now that everybody is staring at them? At this, a guest asks for forgiveness and asks Romantica if there is something she wants her to do. Romantica replies that it's simple. She needs to move to a different table. Hearing this, Desire shouts at Romantica and asks her to stop still. She doesn't stop and angrily asks if he has already forgotten what her party made them go through thanks to that Blue Moon party. Professor Pugman. They threw so much to get to the magic tower. Desire sighed, and a guest stood up, saying she would sit elsewhere. And when she was about to leave, Desire called her name and asked her to stop. Still, she said there was no need for anything. Then she stopped and looked toward Romantica before she left. And then she looked to Desire and said after he was eating, is it okay if she meets him in his room? Also, she wants it to be just the two of them alone so that she can discuss some private matters without the presence of someone who seems to despise her. However, in the Starling dorms, a guest was standing outside Desire's room while knocking, and when he opened the door, he welcomed her in smilingly, also asking sorry for the wait. When he moved in, he said his room was a bit small. She replied they excused her intrusion while looking toward the room. And then Desire said with a smile that it's an uninteresting room at this. She replied that she wouldn't say that necessarily after this. Desire, while serving her tea, says her to sit over there near her on the chair. After this, he tells her it is plum tea, and she replies that it has a very nice aroma while holding the cup of tea. However, their conversation continued, and he asked her why she had said something so misleading earlier. To this, she replied that it was not like it was a lie either, and when he said he guessed that was true, it was quite hard trying to shake off Romantica from coming there. She asked for sorry. And then, while putting the teacup on the table, she said well, in any case, there's something she wanted to ask him about, and does he think he can give her an answer? While taking his tea, Desire asks if it's something he can answer. Then, she asks how he could apply the grease magic to a three-dimensional object and if he thinks he can teach her. At first, he gets worried, but then he replies while laughing that it shouldn't be impossible for him to teach her. After this, he comes toward his table, looking at the papers and finding the main paper. While showing this paper to her, he said he applied grease magic to this piece of paper. However, he presses the grease paper on the table, blows it in the air, and tells the most common and basic magic grease is it's a type of magic that removes the effect of friction from one side and covers that surface with its effects. So the most practical way to use this magic is to apply it to things that will be used on the ground quite a bit. After this, the paper fell on the floor. While he picked it up, he said that if he did this to the paper with the grease magic applied, he would tear it into two parts. After that, he tears the same paper into smaller pieces, dips his finger into the tea, and all the pieces of paper stick to the teacup. While showing her the grease paper cup, he said this was the answer she sought. He hits the teacup with his finger, and the cup goes to her. After this, she asks him if he divided it into smaller polygonal pieces to operate on each separately. He replies, as expected of her, that's correct, and for reference, the hexagon is the easiest polygon shape to work with. As she stood up, he called her name, but she moved away, and he was surprised to see her. When she tried that grease magic while saying dealing with reach was quite tricky, he needed to put in this as an interesting sensation. When she tries to do the grease magic, she suddenly slips and falls on Desir while he is against the wall, and she is on top of him. They were looking at each other. Desir was scared, and sweat started falling down his face while holding the wall. She said he needed a lot of training to maintain this magic better, and then she apologized for what happened. Also, is he hurt anywhere? At this, he replies no, but does she think she can move over for a bit? Hearing this, she smiles and asks him with loving eyes if he will accept her into his party. However, this was the evening in the training district on the 7th day of Romantica's training session. He gave her a cane, which she successfully turned into a ball, and he appreciated her. As she was happy at this, he said, shall they move on to the next stage of this training? While coming to the Harem Academy main hall, she asks if there's more to this training. He replies with a laugh that since she was able to pass a test meant for Tier 3 Magic Circle Magicians, she needs to become a Tier 3 Magic Circle Magician now. Then she worriedly asks if he wants her to become a Tier 3 Magic Circle Magician this fast. Is that even possible? At this, he replies that with his help, she will be able to, but now they should be able to utilize her mana to establish the Tier 3 Magic Circles, and he will need her consent. At this, she replies she doesn't see why she would decline, and then he tells her for them to establish the Magic Circle, he will need to come in direct contact with a specific area of the body. Surprisingly, she asks about a particular location on the body where she needs to come in direct contact for the magic circle, and she gets shocked and starts abusing her when he tells her that the formation of the magic process is near where the heart is. She shouted so loudly even though he was in pain in his ear. Then he told her she really couldn't avoid going through this process if she wanted to establish the Tier 3 magic circles and if she wanted to become an entirely fledged Tier 3 magic circle magician. This was the only way, and he understood showing her back isn't an easy matter. Then she asks him to look at this while pointing to his back, and he replies yes. She relaxes and says that if it's her back, she doesn't see a problem. After this, he teased her, asking what she was thinking earlier. Then while shouting, she replied to him nothing, as he felt she misunderstood him earlier, which didn't make her laugh. After this, he closes the curtain before the window and tells them the preparation is complete. At this, she angrily replies don't look over there. Then he tells her to get ready because he needs to check up on Pram soon. As she was sitting and he was standing behind her, she asked if he thought she could do it. Is it possible for her to become a Tier 3 magic circle magician already? She meant she did trust him. He replies that he knows she can and doesn't worry about it, and if it's her, he knows she can do it. He put his hand on her back while she was shirtless sitting there and told her to close her eyes and focus. Then he asks her to take a deep breath as she has done great so far and now tries to move the mana within her and imagine it as if she is slowly drawing the mana outside of her. While doing this, she said she could not retain it any longer as it might disperse, and then he replied he would keep it together, not be afraid, and keep pushing her mana out while he thinks she has a lot more mana than he expected. It will end for her if he loses focus for even 1 second and for the mana to not disperse, and he needs to grab onto it. He tells her just like how she made those cans into spheres, apply the same principles, and make her mana into a circle. When she asks him what she should do at this, he replies it's his turn to maintain this mana for him. This was hurting her, and her tears fell from her eyes while in pain. Then he tells her that she needs to withstand it while thinking the mana needs to be carefully polished and refined. And the refined mana will try to resist the change it went through and start to draw in the surrounding mana. Also, this will create the origin mana, and if the size of this becomes too tiny, then the strength of the magic will be too weak, and if the scope of this becomes too large, it won't be able to sustain its size and collapse. Also, he needs to accurately calculate the limitation of Romantica's mana and create the third magic circle. He knows this is hard, but she has to endure it a bit longer as she is in pain and calling for help. She thought it hurt so much and didn't believe he could do this any longer. While doing this, he tells her she is fine and knows she can do it. Trust him as they both are sweating. And then after this all, he puts his hand on her head and says she did well, and now he's a Tier 3 magic circle magician. After this, in the outdoor arena, as it was the 7th day of the Pram's training session, Desir stood aside, looking toward them as the time Pram had won during his sparring session was 0 time. However, the fight between them continued when Keria tried to attack him with his sword Pram to save himself while jumping. After this, He felt that Karia's power was unbelievable, and if he tried to block all of these attacks, he wouldn't have enough strength to lift even his sword, so he would probably have to avoid changing. Pram gets scared when Karia comes close as he is about to attack Pram while telling him he overthinks and is in a fight where he is putting his life on the line. If he hesitates even a second, he's dead. He was about to attack Pram, but Pram thinks he needs to dodge. He should also start attacking him in return. Pram also attacks him after seeing Pram's shooting speed. He tells Pram that his attack has gotten much better now, and he's not allowing him to wield his sword. While fighting, he observed that Pram had improved, but the strength of his sword weakened, and then he asked Pram if they could switch things up, but Pram didn't stop. However, the fight between them continued as Pram's speed was fast. Desire was surprised to see that Karia was using a bunch of irregular sword patterns, and he was. He couldn't believe that Karia knew many sword skills, which would be complicated for the current Pram to handle. Karia built a ground hole with his magic and hit Pram so hard by saying, as he told him before, "Don't ever create distance when he is fighting against a magic sworder." The hole attracts Pram, and Karia runs toward Pram to attack by saying it looks like it is his win again, even though Pram is about to fall in. Suddenly, he jumped up and saved himself. Karia was surprised to see this, and then he hit Karia's badge with his sword and made it slip away. Kassiria smiled and asked if he had just baited him into capturing him and thus lowered his guard. Pram smiled and replied that he guessed it worked out somehow, but Karia angrily thought, "What does he mean?" It somehow worked out as he moved at a speed that was untrackable to the eye, and he simultaneously attacked him using that speed as if the sword he was using was a katana. From a distance, Desire calls out to Pram happily, so he appreciates him. After this, Karia asks if they are done with their training session and then calls Desire the technical advisor. Desire bows before Karia and thanks him for his hard work and all he has done for them at this. He replies it was excellent training for himself as well, but it seems there's a lot he needs to improve on. Pram, from aside, surprisingly looked toward them as their conversation continued. After this, he appreciated Pram and apologized for exhibiting crude behaviors and mocking him at the start of their training session. Also, while bowing before Pram, he asks if he thinks he can forgive him. Pram stops him from bending and says he will forgive him, and isn't it natural for people to mock each other during fights? Also, he didn't have to be apologetic and was thankful for all he had done for him. Moreover, he teases Pram again by saying that his neck hurts so much that the little boy is so tiny that his neck hurts from bending down so low. Hearing this, Pram gets angrier. He teases him, saying, "So, little boy, there's something he has been curious about. Is he a boy?" However, the next day at the academy, the announcement is made that the current time is July 17th at 6:20 am. The formation of shadows has been observed, and the time in which the shadow world will take place will be in 3 days. Also, the Harem Academy will enter into preparation mode and distribute the first-year students' clothing items. To receive the supplies, each party leader must get their supplies from the supply station, while students there were surprisingly looking toward each other. However, Donovan asks Percival why he is coming with him, and Percival replies while taking tongs that he is bored. All the students in the hall start looking at Desire in surprise as he walks through them with a bag of clothes in his hand and a bag of clothes on his shoulder. After this, Desire moved to the room where Romantica and Pram were. However, in the room, Pram asked Romantica, while pouring the tea into the teapot, if she would like some tea, and she put her cup in front of him and said sure. Then she smiles, saying thanks to Pram tea. Their days have become much more enjoyable lately. Pram smiles and politely pours tea into her cup with a teapot. Meanwhile, Desire steps in, asking anybody there. Hear this, Pram turns and smiles, saying Mr. Desire, while Desire puts these bags on the floor, telling them these are the clothesline that the single rankers will wear. Then he asks them why they don't try these on, and then Desire takes out the clothesline from those bags and gives them to both of them, and they both wear those clothesline. Romantica says getting dressed is not bad, while Pram gets dressed and smiles, saying these are the single rankers' clotheslines. However, Desire says to both of them that although they may look similar to the other clotheslines, the ones proved to them are slightly different. Hear this, Pram asks in surprise about different Desire, showing them the egg replies instead of explaining it in words, how about he show it to them? Then Desire puts his clothesline on the table and then puts that egg in his clothesline, similar to Romantica and Pram's clothesline. Sees this, Romantica stands aside and asks in surprise what he is doing, and then Pram stands beside the table and asks why he is putting the egg. After this, Desir created the magic fireball in his hand, then directed it on the clothesline. It was covered with magic fire and moved upward. And then the fire magic covered the clothesline all around. Seeing this, Romantica asks in surprise Desir, wait, isn't he possibly a magician? Sees this Romantica, and Pram is amazed. While Desir is doing this, Magic tells them the clothesline that the Tower of Magic developed for this year has an exciting skill within it. Not only can it deflect physical attacks, but it can also deflect magic attacks as well. And then Desir, while taking out the egg from that clothesline, says if the magic attack isn't at least on the same level as the magic gem on there, the defense magic will not break. However, Pram and Romantica are surprised to see the egg because that egg is safe, as Desir attacked this clothesline with a fireball and moved it upward. Nothing affected the egg and it remained safe. While showing them the egg, Desir tells them these clothes are the second generation of the original clothesline. After this, Desir asks Pram if he has his rapier with him right now. Pram surprisingly asks for his rapier then, while holding his rapier in his hands, replies yes, it's right there. Then he asks why he needs his rapier. After this, Desir points to Pram and asks if he thinks he can try to imagine that he is putting away his rapier right now. Pram asks in surprise, saying imagine, and Desir nods yes. Then, Pram takes a deep breath and closes his eyes. Meanwhile, Pram's rapier disappears from his hands. Sees this, Pram gets surprised and then shouts with teary eyes, saying Mr. Desir, his rapier disappeared. Hear this, Desir laughs, saying there is no need to be so surprised. It's called a sub-dimensional inventory. Pram asks about a sub-dimensional inventory, and then Desir explains that there is a sub-dimensional inventory within the magic gem. And if he wants to bring back his rapier, he needs to imagine that he is pulling it out of there, although the blanksome hardly has any weight. The sheath for that blade has some weight, so he thinks it's best to utilize the sub-dimensional inventory to lessen their lord a bit. After this, Desir asks Pram if he can try returning his rapier, while Pram, looking down at his empty hands in distress, thinks of his rapier. As he looks toward his hands and does as Desir tells him and his rapier returns to his hands, Pram excitedly says his rapier is back. While Romantica stands aside, Pram smiles, saying that's pretty interesting. After this, Desir looks to Romantica, saying it's her turn. Hear this, she says, but she doesn't use any weapon, and Desir stands beside her, smiling and trying to imagine she is also pulling something out. She looks toward Desir, asking to pull what out. Then she says she told him before that she doesn't have anything to pull out, dummy. Then Desir looks at him, saying give it a try, he left a present in there for her. Hearing this, she gets a little excited about the gift, and then she replies all right, she guesses she will try it. Then she closed her eyes and followed Pram's method to get his rapier back. As soon as she opens her eyes, she finds a sniper rifle in her hands. She sits on the couch holding that sniper rifle in her hands and asks what is this thing? It's so heavy. Pram sees this sniper rifle, astonished, and runs toward Romantica to help her hold the sniper rifle, and then Desir tells her about that rifle. After this, she gets up holding that sniper rifle, and Desir stands beside her and says he will tell her how it works. Surprisingly, as she looked toward the sniper rifle in her hands, Desir noted to her that the sniper rifle had been synced with a magic gem. She has been reinforced with an even greater magic power than before, and can use her search magic to an even greater range. If she used that sniper rifle, she would probably be able to pierce tier 4 magicians. Hearing this, she happily looked at the sniper rifle in her hand and asked if something like that was possible with this item. Desir smirked and asked if she could do wordless casting and combine that speed with the power of the sniper rifle. She will become a formidable opponent to deal with, and this is his present for her for becoming a tier 3 magic circle magician. Hear this, she thanks him, and then Pram comes near Romantica and excitedly looks toward her sniper rifle. He says it suits her. She holds the rifle and asks if he does it. While Desir stands there, I think it's a good thing he asked about the composition and the structure of these items in his past life. He just needed to tell Jode what he learned for him to make these items. However, Pram comes to Jode's office to show them these items, and Jode thinks he only told him the basic idea and theory behind them. He can't believe Desire was able to make these as expected of a genius. After this, Desire wears the similar clothesline he gave to Romantica and Pram and moves out of Jode's office, thinking now the only thing they need to do is attack the Shadow World. However, on 20th July D-Day in Havrian Academy's auditorium, all the students, including the Academy's staff, gathered there wearing their clothesline. The head of the Academy started his speech, telling students this was the message for all the guests and students at the Havrian Academy. It has been many years since the Shadow World started to become a threat to humankind. During this time, the Shield God's holy empire of Artemis had fallen. The people they loved and the memories they shared with them disappeared into their past, and humanity became divided. The knights would only fight for the kings, while the kings would constantly wage wars. The magicians would hide in the shadows and lurk behind the scenes. Because of these reasons, humanity met its downfall. To overcome this downfall, the Havrian Academy was established. They were created to defeat the Shadow World, and many knights and magicians from all nations gathered within their academy for that cause. Although many years have passed since the first successful attack on the Shadow World, there is always one thing they must never forget. Then, the head continued his speech, saying it was not about earning victory or heeding the Havrian Academy's cause. Saying this, he got silent, and all the students and guests there to hear his speech wanted to know why the head was quiet and what he wanted to tell them next. After a few minutes, the head sighs, and then he continues his speech, saying the one thing he wants them never to forget: they must all value their safety. He hopes everyone can come back alive and safely. They will all be waiting for them to return to the academy, so his speech continues. After this, at the Havrian Academy Annex there, the coach addresses every student, asking how they view themselves right now, and from now on, they are no longer students. They are warriors. They are the elite warrior who have earned the single ranker title, and he does not care if they come back there safe and sound. They must win no matter what and return with nothing but victories. Hear this, all the students there say in unison, "Yes, sir." He motivates the student about their coming adventure. However, Desire stands there among students, holding a tablet. Romantic comes to him from behind, calling out his name. He turns his head and asks what happened. She looks toward him and says the Shadow World they have been designated doesn't think they can go there. Desire asks why. Then Desire, showing her his tablet, says read the last part there. It states that they need at least 4 members in their party. Hear this, she, holding his tablet, says right. Then he says now that he thinks about it, he guesses he forgot to tell them this beforehand. Hearing this, she asks what he means, and he replies well, she will see for herself. Meanwhile, a Jest King's crown gets there from behind. However, they get the message from Desire's tablet, which Romantica holds, that their permission to enter the Shadow World has been granted. The 4 people, Desir Arman, Pram Schneider, and Romantica Eru, hear this. Romantica asks Desire why they only have 3 members. Why did it let? Desire tells her to wait for a second, then they call the name of a Jest King's crown and ask if these 4 listed please step forward to the second Shadow Gate entrance. Hear this, Romantica angrily looks toward a Jest and starts screaming at Desire, while the students there get irritated and ask each other what that scream was. Holding Desire's shirt, Romantica yelled at him, asking if he was severe right now. He added her to the party without consulting any of them. She screamed at him while he got scared from her saying her calm down. She angrily shouted, holding his shirt, asking if he thought she could be calm in this situation. After this, a Jest comes to Pram, and Pram asks her if that means she left the Blue Moon party and sees a Jest there. Desire says that at least Pram seems to have accepted her already, while Romantica, holding Desire's shirt, turns her head and looks back at a Jest heatedly. Then Romantica clenches her fist and points it toward Pram, saying get over there. Moreover, Desire stands there laughing, saying Romantica, they need 4 people to enter this Shadow World, so they need a Jest in their party. Romantica hears this, and she turns her head down before Desire says he is. Then she yells at him again, saying she doesn't like it. She doesn't like this at all. After this, they move from there. While on the way, Pram asks that Desire is a tier 4 shadow world, a pretty dangerous place, and he replies it is perilous. Hear this, he says he sees, and then Desire tells him he doesn't need to worry too much after all, and he did defeat the Tower Magic's captain of the guards. Moreover, Adjust hears their conversation and adds her point by asking Pram if he beat the captain of the guy, which is pretty impressive. Pram replies, saying he was also a magic swordsman like Ms. Adjust. Hearing this, she asks if he would be interested in sparring against her later, and he replies sure. As the three of them talk and move from there while Romantica still stands behind alone, Desire turns and looks toward her, and she angrily looks toward him. Desire, looking toward her, thinks he somehow made a mistake. Maybe he should have talked to Romantica about this beforehand. Standing there, Romantica thought they needed 4 members to enter this shadow world, and no matter what happened, they needed to enter this shadow world. Then she felt that Toa's crest, the artifact she used, could be found within the shadow world. Although it's only a C-rank artifact, it can increase the user's mana capacity, so this artifact is needed for someone like her who was born with a low mana capacity. After this, she also moves ahead, and then while walking with Desire, she sighs, takes a deep breath, and sees that Desire smiles, asking is feeling a little better now. Hearing this, she angrily asks him why he did it, then asks if everything he has been doing is part of his big plan. Is she right? The shadow world they are heading into, the hellish training he has been putting them through, and having Adjust join them as well. Desire replies well, then asks, he supposes, but doesn't expect Adjust to join them. Hear this, she says, well, in any case, this is all for his plan, so she guesses it can't be helped. Then, looking toward Desire, she says that it's fine, although she doesn't like Adjust if he needs her for his plan. Desire smiles and thanks her. However, the 4 of them head to the shadow world. They enter the second hall, and the coach there, seeing them, asks if they are at the Desire party. Desire replies yes, and the coach says if all the party members are present, they will begin the process. After holding his tablet, the coach calls their name to check individually, saying Desir Arman, Romantica, Pram Schneider, and Adjust Kingscrown. Then the coach, holding his tablet, asks these 4 to enter the shadow world for the North Orlando region, correct? Desire replies yes, that is correct. Then the coach asks if they all agree to the terms and conditions listed for the shadow world. Desire replies yes, they agree. Then the coach, pointing toward the shadow gate, says that he will now open up the shadow gate to this shadow world. After teleportation, please be aware that they might become lightheaded and nauseous. And then he says they are now set up at the gate. Pram stands in the shadow gate and says this is the shadow gate to the shadow world, and Romantica teases him, saying to be careful, his foot might get left behind. Pram gets scared, jumps to get his feet up, and sees this. Desire laughs as if they are in the shadow world while they get the message from the hall. They will now send them over to the shadow world, and then they will enter it. Everything in the shadow gate gets blurry, and they don't understand what will happen to them. 4 of them close their eyes. Desire stumbles into a kitchen. He gets up, saying, "Kitchen, where is everyone else?" Then he looks aside, and there is a live fish on the table. Before he saw this, he suddenly got scared, thinking, why is there a live fish? Meanwhile, a chef slaps him hard from behind, and he falls away. His head hits the ground hard, and he sits up angrily, asking for an enemy attack. Desire was surprised when the chef yelled at him, asking what he was wearing. The useless piece of shit, did he forget the importance of today? Then he stands on Desire's head and yells, saying the esteemed guests are coming, and this is a battlefield. Hurry and get changed into his uniform. Meanwhile, he announced that he had encountered the skilled chef Jeffrin Eastwood, and the quest dinner service had begun. He is the assistant to the stubborn and prideful head chef tasked with making and serving a successful dinner with the help of the head chef. The successful completion of this quest will play a vital role in influencing the preceding inquiries that are to come. After this, Desire quickly gets up, wears that uniform, and starts cooking according to his chef. The chef stands with him angrily, asking if he can be faster, he says faster. Desire replies yes, sir, and quickly does the work. He cooks the slice of meat in a frying pan. Meanwhile, the chef is still shouting at him, asking who told him to slice the meat like that and get it right. Desire replies yes, sir, and the chef doesn't let him breathe even for a second, and once he completes one task, he tells him to do another quickly. As soon as he finishes the second task, he tells him to do the following task quickly. Afterwards, Desire quickly moved the wooden spoon into the large pot on the stove, while Chef shouted at him, saying, "Newbie, finish the sauce soon," and Desire replied, "Yes, sir." While Desire was cooking the soup, Chef ordered him to get the plates on the table. He quickly set all the vessels by leaving the soup there. As he set the dishes, the chef ordered him to get the potatoes. He brought the potatoes, saying, "Yes, sir." After this, as soon as he gets the potatoes, Chef shouts at him, saying "Newbie," and Desire answer "Yes, sir," while stirring the spoon in the bowl of soup. After finishing all his work, Desire just sat down to breathe. Chef shouted at him, saying "Newbie." Hear this, he quickly got up, folding his arm behind, and replied "Yes, sir." Then Chef closed his eyes and smiled, saying Desire did well despite it being his first day. "Great work. Get some rest now." Hear this, Desire smiled and thanked him. After this, Desire sighed, thinking something felt off right now, too immersed in his role. After this, Desire sighs and sits on the chair, heading down. Thinking this place feels like a battlefield, he wonders what everyone else is doing. While the chef was shouting at other workers, seeing this thought, Desire felt like the chef was starting to like him more. Suddenly, Desire sees the bowl of misal lying on the table. Seeing this, he thinks, "Aren't those misal?" Then Desire gets near the table, asking Chef Sir if he likes misal, and Chef looks toward the misal and replies, asking those in the bowl right. He forgets they were called misal. After this, the chef picks one of the misal and checks it, saying to Desire he can't use these for anything. These were given to them by the higher-ups. These rare fruits can't be found in this region, but even those have a pleasant scent. It's too good and tart to be used for anything, so he planned to throw these away soon. Hear this, Desire stands there, thinking he is pretty sure this product has something to do with the quest, because these products aren't found initially within the shadow world. Meanwhile, the announcement is made, and Desire gets the message that he has discovered the hidden quest dinner service above and beyond expectations. Chef Jaffrin does not know much about using mazale as one of his cooking ingredients. He will need to lead him with his knowledge regarding the misal, and if he can satisfy the esteemed guests, he will receive an additional reward. However, should he fail to do so, he will be put into a disadvantageous situation for the foreseeable future. After this, Desire called Chef from behind, asking him if it would be all right to know what he was planning for the dessert. The chef turned his head to look back at Desire, saying he planned to make a chocolate cake. Hearing this, Desire asks, putting his fist on the table, if he will serve a complimentary tea alongside that cake. Then, the chef replies that the problem is that the esteemed guests dislike the tea leaves they were planning to use. Desire politely says, "Sir, if it's all right with him, would it be all right if they use these misal then?" Hears this, Chef, looking toward the misal bowl on the table, asks if he wants to use the misals. Then he asks if he even knows how to use these as ingredients. Desire replies, "Yes, sir, if he will leave it to him, he can make some tea using them." After this, Chef says he will make tea with them and starts thinking about it. Meanwhile, Desire gets the message that Chef Jaffrin's approval of him is currently acknowledged because of his high approval from Chef Jaffrin, so he trusts his request. After this, Desire looks toward the chef, which means he convinced him right as the chef, his hand tied, was looking toward the fruit bowl. However, the chef says he will trust him on this. Then, hearing this, Desire gets excited and thanks him. After this, the chef says that to make his tea, he tells him what ingredients he requires. Desire replies yes and tells him about the ingredients he needs for tea. After this, Desire prepares the tea, and then he serves that tea to the chef in a teacup. Moreover, Desire was cleaning the dishes at night when the chef came to him and asked what tea he had invented himself. Seeing the chef there, Desire excitedly smiled, saying, "Sir." After this, he turns off the tape, removes the gloves, and cleans his hand. He replies that no, he didn't invent it. He learned it from his friend. Hear this. The chef stands there with a folded arm, says he is both from the same region, he presumed, and then asks if he thinks it will be possible for him to make that tea again. Hearing this, Desire excitedly replies that if he has the ingredients, he can always make it, and chef replies that's good to hear. After this, Desire smirks, thinking if the esteemed lord liked his tea so much that he wanted him consistently to brew that tea for him. Meanwhile, the chef punches hard on his head, saying he twerp wiped that smug expression off his face, and then Desire falls on the floor and smoke comes out of his head due to pain. While the chef sits in front of him on a stool with his hands tied, saying he is correct, the esteemed lord has taken quite a liking for the tea he made for him. He says he wants to drink that tea regularly. Hear this, Desire, holding his head, sits up and looks toward chef with teary eyes. While the announcement is made and Desire gets the message that he was able to carry out his quest successfully, dinner service is above and beyond expectations. He has received the personal attendant job position as a reward for completing this quest. The unique attendant work will provide essential and valuable clues for the preceding inquiries to come. After this, Desire heads up and asks the chef if that means he will be going to the esteemed lord's residence, and the chef replies that that's all right. He will be leaving this kitchen, and he will become the esteemed lord's attendant. Hear this, Desire says, then he guessed he would need to hurry and leave if he didn't want to get hit by him again. Hear this, the chef angrily says him a little twerp and starts punching him again, while Desire raises his hand in front of his face in fear. And then the chef patted Desire's head, telling him good luck and that he was sure he would do well. He knew this better than anyone else who heard this. Desire stayed silent, heading down and closing his eyes, replaying "Yes, sir." However, Desire sat down, folding his leg before the chef, while the chef put his hand on Desire's head press and then held his head hard. Desire starts sweating, asking chef, but his hand feels like